Welcome to the Quota Podcast. I'm Dylan Fole.
And I'm Gavin Malcolm.
Our guest tonight is Amy Height.
She is so wonderful and fantastic. It is incredible how much good vibes can be contained in such a small, wonderful person. We know you guys are going to love this. We talk about everything from how much sunlight is appropriate for a human adult. We talk about living in New York versus Denver. And we get into joy and all the wonderful ways you can find it. So please enjoy.
What can I tell you and where can I start? I'm a very recent transplant to Denver.
How recent?
Oh my gosh. I moved here towards the end of the summer, so like July of 2020. I moved from New York, and it was entirely pandemic related. So
I didn't know that.
Oh, absolutely. So the pandemic was like, hey, were you thinking of making a life change? Let me just force that. And so that has occurred, which has worked out in so many ways. I'm really happy to be here, and it's just such a beautiful spot to be in.
Where'd you move from?
From New York.
Like New York City.
New York City,
like
Washington
real deal,
Heights,
yeah.
the George Washington Bridge. Like
wow.
there we were, and now there we are not, which is so much better.
Yeah.
New York is a really interesting place to live, and I feel like there are so many opinions about the experience of living there. Like there's people who love it, and it's totally their jam. There are a lot of reasons to live there, and then also a lot of reasons to be like, I cannot do this anymore. It's a very challenging place, and I think that totally works for some people, and I am a mountain person, so it did not work for me. And
Where are you from originally?
Outside of Toronto.
What?
I know. So I'm an immigrant in like the most mild sense of the word. So I moved to America in 2012. And I grew up outside of Toronto, but I moved to Vancouver for university and then stayed there for a few years after that. So that was maybe apart from Denver, the best move I've ever made.
I was going to say, I feel like then Colorado probably feels very much like home.
1000%. It feels so familiar and so good. And that was part of the reason for moving here, was just that like it's beautiful, it's outdoorsy. Colorado generally sort of just feels like Canada shrunk down. Like a lot of the things that are here and a lot of the way that like people are, at least in Denver, are like it's just so chill and so welcoming, and it feels like very homey. And so coming back to a place that has mountains has been just wonderful and good for my brain. And also you can see the sky, which doesn't always happen in New York. Like I would go several days without really actually seeing the sky or the daylight. And that was hard. And
is it just like smoggy, or like literally the buildings like
it's mostly just the buildings. Yeah. Like
really?
You have to just like crank your neck back so hard to like look up and be like, am I still on a planet? I don't know. And then you are, but you're in New York.
Whoa.
And so
that alone keeps me out. I notice a dramatic difference if I don't get enough sunlight. I'm part plant.
What
I run
do
on
you
photosynthesis.
notice? That actually sounds so right. I can see your little sprouts and they look nice.
Yeah.
What
they're
happens?
split in.
But they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
What happens if you don't get enough sunlight?
I literally shut down like a solar powered car or something. Like it's embarrassing.
I bet a lot of people are like that, and we just don't realize it, because I'm probably like that when I'm like too into my editing and like only like looking out the window, and then I get bummed on editing, and
we got a sweet someone's backing up their car.
Oh, cool.
Or its truck.
But anyway, and I never realized it probably is partly due to sun. So I bet there are other people that may not have realized that until just now.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to illuminate it for them.
LOL. I feel like that's so accurate though, right? Because you're taking in that energy from outside life and then turning it into something else. And if you're not replenishing it, then we're just sort of draining our life force into our computers or our editing suites or our job things.
Well, I mean, like, even if it's like the difference of like, I can work inside on a sunny day and I'm genuinely like, there's more energy and stuff.
1,000%.
And then if it's gray, even if I'm outside, I'm like super lethargic and I just can't make things happen. And it, like my brain doesn't function as well. And I think it's literally
solar powered guy.
Yeah. I think it's because I'm from Colorado. Like I'm so used to 300 days of really beautiful sunshine as much as possible. And then I go other places and I'm like, how do you people live like this?
What's happening here?
Yeah.
That was the tricky thing about living in Vancouver. Like it was so gorgeous a lot of the time, and then for 5 months it rains, and so you're just in like it's still beautiful and it's temperate and it's wonderful, but it's gray for half the year. So it's I think that like
is it
seasonal
at least
affective.
Warm rain?
Totally.
So it's like playing in the rain weather.
I think so. Like to a point. There's like some days you don't.
It's still winter.
It's still winter,
So.
but it's like, it's not snowing as much.
All right.
But the gray is very real. I don't know. I feel like I'm on board with the sunshine. Hooray. Team
Yeah.
sun.
Well, we're so glad you're here in Colorado where you can get as much of it as you can.
Thank
we were
you.
just talking
Yeah,
about
big sun, exactly.
So Gavin's house has a bunch of random holes cut in it, and like
They're called skylights.
but they are random in their placement.
Yeah.
Insofar as they would direct sunlight onto your face first thing in the morning, or
They're
sunlight
in between walls.
because that's where the sun needs to go. So we decided that big sun was actually behind the construction of, I'm sure, this whole subdivision, and it's really just trying to permeate always, which is maybe good.
There are worse problems to have.
Maybe. What would be like the worst big thing to have built your house? Like if big something was responsible for your house.
I like this game so much.
What's the worst version?
Well, the problem is any like big tobacco or big pharma have lots of money, so presumably you'd have a massive house if they were in charge.
No, because they are shady little snakes, and they try and make their profits so much that they probably
you would die.
Interesting.
You would it would either whatever they built you would die from, but you'd be in lots of space until
you would look cool while you were there.
Perhaps, yeah.
Sure.
That's so interesting.
Those were the two that I was going to go with. I was going to go big pharma.
Big pharma, okay.
Because they just seem to make a lot of shortcuts.
Oh yeah.
I'm picturing like you buy your house and then. Just like at the end of a pharmaceutical ad, it's like side effects maybe leaky roof, toilet doesn't work, and just like it goes through like a list of horrible problems of like you're inside, but welcome to this new housecape.
Oh, that's really interesting. And they would say it so quickly that you'd be like, I'm sure it's fine, and just ignore it, and then it turns out.
Ask your doctor if
this house
is correct for you. Yeah.
But then they would sell you. All of the things that you need to fix that house.
Because they'd have like a roof repair kit.
Right, because they have the pill for the side effects.
Yeah, exactly.
It's made by the same people.
Uh-huh.
You're so right. What if it was like big cockroach? Like if your house was built by a big cockroach.
I'm into that.
That would be okay?
Yeah, I'm pro cockroach. They can beat the nuclear Holocaust. They are like
at the end of days.
They're like so sturdy and like hardy as a creature. I feel like they make a very good structure.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Where do live live though? They live like in a very dark. No, I think they hate the light, right? So it would be very dark and cave like.
Yeah, a little damp.
Very. Yeah. Wouldn't need a humidifier. That's a plus.
No, that's pretty good. And you'd always have friends.
With your sun thing, it's kind of gonna work.
That is a pretty big deal breaker. Let's be honest. All right, guys. I'm looking for a house.
Yeah.
It can't be built by cockroaches. That's my one bugaboo.
Oh no! Is this going to happen this whole time? Are we just going to keep illuminating and making bug jokes? And I just mean like your puns are just.
Yeah, I wasn't kidding when I was joking around. It worked today. I was like, just so you know, release all expectations of what this is. There's no pressure. It's basically an hour and a half of free association. There's
like
no
an improv
structure.
game.
Yeah.
I'm delighted. No, I'm pleased. Thanks for letting me come play.
Yeah. Well, continue your story. So you moved to New York, and then you just recently moved here to Colorado. What brought you here?
The pandemic. So the thing that I did as a job isn't a job right now or possibly ever again. It's hard to know. I worked in the theater as my vocation since college, and that's not a thing we do anymore because it involves the gathering of the people and the spitting on the others. So we're not doing that, which is unfortunate. But it was, I feel very lucky to have gotten to do it for a job for as long as I did. It was very interesting and cool and sparkly, and also like sometimes very not sparkly. The first day that I was working on the Broadway, I showed up at work and they were showing me around, and I was like, great, good to know where all the things are. And on that very day, all of the showers backed up with sewage. And I was like, oh, it's so magical here. Like,
yay, the big city.
The big city. I made it, and I work on Broadway and the theater's filling up with sewage. Okay, neat. So that was, it was always like very much a mix of that. And I feel like that is quintessentially New York. Like, oh, it's like sparkly and cool and exciting. And also like there's probably feces somewhere and you just have to like be very careful.
To me, I feel like I've never thought of New York City as like this big sparkly city.
It definitely has.
I picture
that.
like
It
this
definitely
is
has
where like you
both.
go
Okay.
if you want to like get in a knife fight.
I mean, I think maybe in the 70s. I think it's like a little bit less knife fighty now. But it's just like, it's very commercial and it's very, it's very cool. Like there's wonderful arts and culture and food and like every kind of human you could ever hope to meet or encounter. Like they live there, and that it was wonderful and cool. And, it just felt like a really like interesting place to be. I think the tricky thing is, that there are so many people in such a small space. So you have this like 13-mile long island, and then, the, boroughs off to the sides, and it's just like millions of people in not a huge space. And it used to feel like being in a hamster cage, where like there's just too many hamsters in this cage, and then the hamsters all go crazy because they don't have enough room, and now they're all killing each other. But like everybody was just, it puts you very much in like survival-y mode, I think, just because it's so intense. But there are also like some very cool redeeming things about it, and I feel very lucky to have been able to live there. So,
well, and I feel like you probably keep a way cooler head under pressure than like someone who lives in Colorado their whole life, and like they never have had to like make eye contact with a crazy person on a subway while they're being like smushed up against the door, and then just like pretend I'm not here, and just like get through it because you have 2 more stops. Like
that is so real.
Like I remember as a kid being like weirded out by the light rail because there was like someone else on the entire car with me, and I was like, this is weird.
This is not like being in my car at all, where I'm alone. Yeah. I feel like that's very real. Like you learn how to interact with people differently, and just how to like coexist in a space, and like what are the rules of the sidewalk, or what are not the rules of the sidewalk.
The rules of the sidewalk is you get a half. You get the right half.
That is correct.
And if you are of any other opinion, you are wrong, and you don't get to use sidewalks anymore. You have to walk on the street.
You have to. Good luck. Also very dangerous. Cool.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's real. I think there's definitely like a certain amount of like resilience that comes out of living in any place that is really intense or really busy or really full. Like you just, I don't know, I feel like the brain does a very good job of filtering out like what is important and what is a threat, and then what is nothing or what is noise.
Yeah.
So it's interesting living here now. Like I live on South Broadway in the city. And I've had like some people come visit, and they're like, "Oh my God, you live on South Broadway? Like, is it so loud?" I'm like, "No, it's so like I face South Broadway. Like, I see the Sprouts at like Broadway and Mississippi. Like, it's right there in that like busy intersection." And I'm like, "No, this is so peaceful because I'm used to."
And you're also like 2 blocks off of the highway itself too.
Oh
like,
yeah,
you're like the busiest.
It's pretty busy. I hear nothing, and it's wonderful because I think I'm used to a certain level of like intensity, and so. That's also been interesting to translate to work and to basically everything here, that like even on like the most insane day at work, and like we have some days, as you know, that are like pretty intense and crazy, and there are like high stakes things happening. I have yet to have a day here in my entire Denver experience that feels moderately as intense as anything like in New York. And I think my nervous system for so many reasons is like, oh, I'm so happy. Thank you. So it's just interesting. Like it's a different level of intensity, and I think like probably everybody here is going to live way longer because just everything is just like a little bit calmer. That doesn't mean that people aren't working hard and people aren't focused, but there's just like a level of mayhem that is not a part of the day generally. So that's kind of good. Also, like not taking the subway is maybe the best thing that has ever happened to me. Did you know that?
I didn't know. I'm so excited to find out.
Yeah. Okay. So things you should know. Yes. I have an Instagram account that I have not contributed to since leaving New York. However, it is called Rage Poems. And I used to sit on the subway and compose my rage poems so that I didn't punch anybody, because like the experience of being on public transit, it was so banana pants. Oh, he's getting the phone, everyone.
Yes, we're going to read some rage poems.
We're going to read some rage poems.
So I had to do this as like a therapeutic experience to like get through my commute every day. Because
what a lovely thought, by the way. Massive kudos.
Thank you.
What a great, like, like that's, it's maybe not a win-win, but it's definitely not a win-lose. Like, nobody gets hurt. You get to be creative.
Yep.
And fantasized rage and like violence is always funnier and like better than like when you're like, man, you're like, oh, it'd be so good to like punch the wall, and then you don't, but like you still get the like release.
Just like
versus
a
if you
moving
punch
of
the wall, now you have to fix the wall.
And
like,
your hand. Yeah. So like nothing and no one was harmed in the making of the rage poems, and I felt better, and like I think they're funny, so here we are. But the experience of not having to do that every day, A+. And did you know that when you have a car, like as an adult person new to Colorado, I I spent a lot of time on the train. So much time.
Finish your story, and then we're going to have you read a couple.
Okie doke.
Yes. So what I didn't know.
All right, 55. That's not.
It's not like
It's not so many.
There
It looks like a lot when you're scrolling.
There's like
That is
probably
55 more
another
poems than I've ever made.
ever. Okay,
So.
we're gonna like start a poem challenge. I still have a bunch on my phone that are not on there, but now it just feels like too belated to post them. But there's probably 100 more poems in my phone.
Anyways.
My own like well-being. But as an adult person,
Yes.
I have only lived in cities and I have never had a car. And so I moved here and I bought a car. And as it turns
Wait,
out,
what?
I know.
How old were you when you purchased your first set of wheels?
32.
What?
Yeah.
How old were you when you got a driver's license?
16.
Okay, because I've met some people where they're just like,
I
I'm not
just
even
didn't
getting
do
a
it.
license. And I'm like, come on.
Get a license. Yeah,
Okay.
it's helpful.
Sorry.
That's all good. Just it's interesting as an adult person to have purchased this car and then to be like, oh, did you know you can drive to the grocery store and then you get your groceries and then you put them in the back of your car and then you drive them home. It is a miracle.
Yeah, you'd have to like.
It is it is so great.
Wow.
Yeah, and
I take that for granted.
Yep.
For sure, yeah.
Yep.
bonus, if you don't want to bring them inside, you don't have to. You can leave them in the car. You can leave all the toilet paper you just bought at Target in the car.
Yeah.
You don't have to bring it in. It can just stay in the car. You can't do that if it's a Subway. You can't leave anything in the Subway. And then also you have to carry it in the Subway. And you have to then like make these
And it
value
has to be
assessments.
only so much that you can carry on your person.
Yeah.
And still defend yourself. Defend yourself.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
a Subway type scenario.
Like rarely is the Subway like dangerous. It's mostly just crowded and annoying. So if you have 18 bags, one, you're that jerk with 18 bags. And two, now you have to carry all this stuff 16 blocks to your apartment. So you have to make the value assess of like, do I
The
want...
nearest spot from the Subway was 16 blocks.
No, I never lived that far from
Oh,
the
okay.
Subway. No, but
is
like,
that even
as-
an option?
Often,
Oh,
yes.
yeah,
I think
of
there's a
course.
ton of people who...
Because
Yeah.
it only goes like certain directions.
Yeah.
Oh my.
It's like the
Right.
it's
That
a little
sounds
bit like the
terrible.
light rail. Like the light rail here is worthless unless you live by it.
Right on it.
That's true.
Or
But
drive
at
yourself
least
to the light
like
rail
there
and
is
then...
an
Yeah.
option to drive.
Right.
In New York, like that's just not an option.
Right.
Not for mostly everyone.
Yeah.
So that like you can just go to the store and then like drive home.
Wow.
It's so
So happy
great.
for you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm a change.
Did you
lady.
realize that and then intentionally go buy a bunch of really big items?
I
Like
mean-
like big like body pillows and like really obnoxious, obtrusive like I bought a random end table just because I
because.
needed to use my car.
Well, so I think I knew about this as a thing because I have driven a car and
I heard lore of
I
it.
heard lore of it,
Whispers on the
you know.
wind.
No, it's
Yeah.
on television.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
On
yes, I've
television,
seen
they
it
show
in-
you how it's done.
With the car and the transporting of the
90210,
things.
yeah.
What I did purchase that was quite an adventure was this like lamp from World Market. Also
Yeah.
a new find. World Market, turns out, is
Yeah.
not sponsoring
It's
this
like-
podcast, but I love it so much.
It's like if IKEA wanted to impress your parents.
yes. Oh my
Is
God,
really
it's
what
so
it is.
good. They should
'Cause
put that
it's
on the sign.
It's not like that much better than IKEA.
No, but it's
In
great.
fact, some of the furniture is probably worse, but it
Yeah.
looks so fancy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And like their candles and their stuff is just
Yeah.
it's very good there. It's very good. They had this like beautiful lamp that was probably like it was a weird big curvy shape. And this is an audio medium, so I can't demonstrate it for you, but it had the base and then this like big curvy loopy thing that I bet to like measure the full like ground plan footprint that this
There
would
it
cover.
is.
There it is.
You're a builder now.
We went on a journey. Was probably like 4.5 feet, but it was unwieldy. And they were like, we're going to sell you the floor model. And I was like, sure, that's cool. And then carried this like incredibly unwieldy thing that I then had to dismantle and put in the back of my car, which is, you know, it fit, but then putting it back together. I think I fought with the lamp for like 3 hours in my kitchen. And then I was like, you're going back to the store. And then I put it back in the car and we went back to the store. And then lamp is, I'm sure, having a beautiful new life with someone else. But
Wow, I love lamp.
I ended up purchasing the same lamp again, but in the box so that I could not have to take it apart and just put it together. And I affectionately refer to her as Nightmare Lamp.
Hey, babe, we can just go turn on the nightmare real quick. I'm trying to do some light reading.
You gotta set it up to an Alexa and
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Alexa, turn on the nightmare.
That's a great idea. I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's fantastic.
It also flickers at random times. Anyway, it's fine. It's fine.
Yes.
Having a car. Very good. Do you
Now, we're going to definitely come back to rage poems.
Okay.
I really like the like the About Me section.
Yeah.
Of Rage Poems. Like I'm picturing this as an OkCupid. It just says Rage Poems. Because composing a poem feels more productive than losing my shit at people. Prayer hands, namaste. This is amazing. And I can't wait to hear some of your wonderful works.
Oh, goodness. Okay, it's like a cold read. Like, I haven't read these in a while. I wonder if I should go...
But you're professional. It's been a couple months, but you're professional.
I should clarify, I was never an actor. That was not my gig. But it's okay. It's all right. You know what? Oh, okay. This is one of the originals. I remember writing this one because it was so shocking. Okay.
I'm so excited. I wish that people listening could feel the tension in the room. This is so great. I'm so excited. Okay. Expectations are so...
This all right. So much pressure.
Does this bring back any memories of what you were going through at perhaps this time in your life?
Do you remember what you wrote? Specifically?
I do. I remember sitting in this train. I remember I was coming back from a recording of a podcast
serendipitous.
So meta. It is incidentally called the Babysitters Club, and it is like two men in their 40s who get drunk and talk about the Babysitters Club books, and it is the best thing apart from this podcast in the entire world. They are like 5 years in, and it is so funny. And every week they read a book.
Yeah, give them a follow, guys. Check them out.
Yeah, Babysitters Club. Very good. Okay, so I was coming back from a live taping of that podcast from Brooklyn. Okay. If you are going to defecate in the train, I am going to change cars. A merciful moment for the MTA to be stalled. That really happened. He was literally pooping in the seats. Yeah.
That is... I think of that, and my first thought is like, what if he's the only one of us that's truly free? Like, I've never experienced that level of not caring.
I don't know if it was
I don't think the world would be a nicer place.
No.
But I do wonder what it's like to genuinely not care to that level.
Yeah.
Usually there's probably some type of chemicals.
Something is happening to encourage this decision.
Yeah. That's great. You know, poor little field mouse is hearing from City Mouse.
Yeah.
How crazy that, New Yorkers, and you hear comedians and stuff joke about how crazy the subway is, and you're always like,
yeah, sure,
there's got to be some creative license being taken here.
No, it's all real. I think
you didn't even have to try. You immediately were able to find
that one. Yeah,
talking about a dude taking a dump on the train is truly. Let's all pray for New York. This is rough.
So a little bit, I don't want to give it a hugely horrible reputation. It can do that on its own. But, again, redeeming things. Mm-hmm. And also, the subway's a bad place. I just, every day. And I think when I started writing these, I would tag the MTA's Instagram. Also, why does the MTA have an Instagram? Just to be this is my version of submitting a complaint, but I'm going to do a poem.
Well, I feel like if I was going to get a complaint, that's how I would want it, right?
A gentle, free-form musing.
Well, and at least you're they put some thought and effort into this, so they took the time to not just rage scream at me, right? I'm picturing if you're the TSA lost your bag or something, and then instead of going in and yelling at this poor person, just go in and give them a small limerick or a haiku about missing your bag.
I really appreciate your help in finding my bag. Also, can you please make the man stop pooping?
Exactly,
it's in the same world.
I love that so much.
Mm-hmm.
For so many reasons, please encourage your child to remove his mouth from the pole.
Can we make this into a dining room table or a coffee table book?
Yeah.
It wouldn't take a ton to
That's the ultimate plan for Rage Poems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd buy that in a heartbeat.
I was just gonna say, this hasn't caught on fire like so many awesome things in our lives that don't gain massive popularity. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't have been shocked if you pulled that up and there had been 1 million followers, honestly.
Yeah.
There's not, but...
When the book comes, maybe.
When the book comes,
yeah. So, as soon as you had mentioned your Instagram, I just found out that Allie's brother is doing a podcast with a guy who is the host, or I don't know if the host, he is the creator of the Nihilist Arby Twitter account.
Oh my gosh, no way.
And it's literally, this guy just says like the most horrifically nihilistic, like the world is empty and nothing is nothing. And just like
Arby's.
at the very end, he's like, go grab yourself a beef and cheddar. Like, but he has no affiliation with Arby's. They're not paying him. Like he just did it as like a joke.
I'm sure
And
it
he has
started that way.
so
Like, what
many
was
things.
that first one that he was like, yeah, that's a good way to end that. And now here he is, and he is,
So that's
Wait, is that a thing?
It's like a
It's
real
a real
thing.
thing. No,
Yeah.
But it's a big thing.
Oh
I've
yeah, he's
never
like
heard of it.
he has a pretty decent following. Like I think it was over 100,000 followers or something crazy like that.
Of the people who just really appreciate the
And
sentiment, I guess.
they're
of,
like
had you heard of it before this? Or?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's a
Yeah.
real thing. Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
had no idea. Yeah, and so I'm a big fan of let's get RedT Homes out into the ether and support Amy's dream.
That
This
is my
amazing.
dream. A coffee table book is
Yeah.
my dream.
One of many.
One
But
of
yeah.
many, yeah. Do you want me, I'll give you one more.
I don't. Yeah, they make poetry books. Like
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a thing
I
that
actually know
that
a friend
exists
who
in real
published a real poetry book with like
Whoa.
like it was like something she'd been working on for like 8 years, and it's like this volume of her
God.
soul, like a real poetry book
That's legit.
that she actually got like legitimately published.
Good for her. I feel like that's very
Yeah.
hard to do, especially with poetry. Like it's niche.
It's not a hot market.
It's not a hard market. Like I think there are the people who like really love the poetry and are like into it and of that world, and it's beautiful and good, but it's itty bitty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I
She
was
did it,
published when I believe
What?
it was in 5th grade.
Excellent.
So they had it.
I'm
When
just
you
now
speak-
learning this.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. It was something like Swinging Sally, but it was in an anthology, like
Yep.
of like. But they
Anthology?
really, I mean,
Like a
word
collection?
like
I'm
a
new.
collection.
Oh.
of lots.
Uh,
So they
context,
probably
Gavin.
so here, which when you mentioned it struck in my mind for the first time in I don't even know 25 years, that it's all a business. Like there's no market for this. Nobody is buying this except for the parents of the
Yep.
people.
Yep.
And my parents bought 2, and they probably charged them like $50 because it's a massive book. But you do that for 1,000 kids.
There you go.
And of course, your kid is public or is in this book. You're gonna buy it. So there's 1,000 people buying 1 or 2 or more, maybe even more for $50.
Yeah.
It's not a bad business.
It's not a bad
and this is the
business.
first time I realized that 25 years later that it was specifically for that.
I mean, I imagine also too to give you as like a young author the experience of being published, and
As
that's
a
like,
young author.
you know, like I feel like that's a very
mean-
formative thing to have happen, and then it's very encouraging because you're like, oh, like maybe I have a thing that could be nurtured, and I don't know.
Yeah, I wish I had it here. I would read it. I
I
would
know.
be a part of the reading of the poem.
I feel like that's gonna have to happen.
For sure do have technically a notebook of poems in the I might.
Okay.
I could have thrown it away because I can't imagine why I would keep it. But I did have
Posterity.
like an entire spiral bound notebook because we had to write poems for English class.
Yeah.
And my teacher kept telling me they were good.
Yeah.
And so
I bet they
just
were.
kept it as like a book of affirmation where I'm like, every time I see that book, I'm like, remember that time an authority figure said you were great? Keep up the good work. And then I just go on with my life.
I think that's so beautiful.
My life is constantly reaffirming how great I am, which has led to other problems. But they're
Interesting.
different problems than most other people's problems.
That is very fascinating. Your life is constantly reaffirming.
Like all
How
I
it's
do
mirrored.
is like I've lowered the bar for what I'll pat myself on the back for.
Okay.
So low that my whole day I'm just like, "God, you're fucking nailing it. Like the whole time in my head.
Is that a bad thing though? Like I feel like is that maybe not like a really motivating
I don't
thing?
think it's terrible. I think I've maybe convinced myself I'm far more impressive and awesome than I actually am. Like one of the
Interesting.
things that Allie does best is she really takes me down a notch or two, and it's one of my favorite things.
Love
She'll
her.
just like call me out in public in front of people when like she knows it'll hurt, and it's so funny.
Is it though?
It's so, but it's because I've earned it. Like I'll
Okay.
be sitting there telling everyone how wonderful I am, and she's like, "Really though, Copernicus?" Like
Okay.
whatever it is, and she'll just like say something that lets everyone know, like, remember, he's full of shit. He's just living in this little world inside of his head where he's so great.
Here's an alternative thought. Is there a world where your life, your life itself and not you, is actually reaffirming that you are like on the right path and doing the right thing and that you are
I would like to think so. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like
okay.
So Allie and I, we talk about an upward spiral.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's worried about downward spirals. Like they stub their toe first thing in the morning and they're like, uh-oh.
Day's over.
My day's going to spiral out of control from here. I will wake up and then I'll throw my toothpaste as high as I can in the bathroom because it's got a really tall ceiling. And if it flips exactly and I catch it like a ninja, I'm like, hell yeah, today's going to rule. You know, like
what
I
happens
just
if it
lower.
hits the floor?
Then I just throw it again until I catch it great.
Perfect.
Like
there's a guy I follow on Instagram called Charlie Rocket, I think.
What a great name.
That's a great name.
His thing is winning streak. And so just like anytime anything good happens, you just go winning streak. And
oh my God,
and
I love
you,
that so much.
That's upward spiral for sure.
Yeah.
Same exact thing.
Yeah.
There's so much power in like what you're paying attention to. And so if you're like looking for the things that are going well, you will keep seeing them. And if you're looking for the things that are shitty and bad, like you will absolutely see those. But if you're trying to pay attention to like, I just sat in that chair so well, and I like definitely just took a drink of that without
fun
like.
of me, but I 100%
No, but
give
I'm
myself
actually
the biggest kudos.
I'm
for stuff
actually like
that.
not making fun of you at all. Like I'm entirely serious that like if you are throughout the day just being like things continue to go well, like you'll keep seeing the things that are going well, and that's just so much more buoying than like that went wrong and like that person sucks and this is all hard. And
when if you keep track of all these little tiny itty bitty wins, when something inevitably does go wrong, you're like, that was that one thing today, like whatever, who cares? And even if it was like, I got in a car crash, you're like, I still had 100 other wins today, you know, like.
And it kind of like balances it all out. Yeah.
So I think I just come in a little too like self-assured. I think a little bit of like, I think it's important to like keep yourself in check a little bit.
Okay.
Versus like, I mean, it's also just like part of my personality in general. It's like I'm a very extroverted person and loud, and so like if I am convinced I'm so great, I just kind of like take over a space with my energy. Versus if I'm like, what if I let other people talk too? That'd be great. They probably have ideas.
Speaking of that, I would like to hear,
what an interesting awareness to have.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about Amy's experience in the theater.
Yes.
We kind of really glossed over that when she mentioned it, and I think that would be a very interesting topic. Like,
you're so sweet to ask. I'm so happy to talk about it. What a cool and interesting industry to work in. I've been feeling a little bit this week like I'm like, I miss it. Like I'm aware of the days when I'm not in that energy, because it's a very specific, like, again, it's an intensity, but like a really positive one. And that like creative energy and like just like humans with like big personalities. Like you guys both have big personalities and you're fabulous and wonderful. And then when you put like 40 people who are you in a room, it's like, wow, like the electricity of that is really interesting. I feel very lucky that I got to do that as a job. Like they're setting up this week for the they're kind of doing a version of the Tony Awards, and trying to like figure out how to like space everybody out and how they're going to do that. And I was looking at some photos and just being like, oh, I'm sad I'm not there. And I'm not like, because I worked at Radio City for a season. And so I'm like very familiar with that space that they're setting this thing up in. And I'm just like, I'm sad to not be in that world anymore.
That third
but I
stair
can.
Creaks,
Totes, yeah. Don't fall in the big hole.
Yeah, exactly.
You will die. It was a really it was a cool thing to do as a gig for so long. I started in university as a performer, thinking like that it would be the track that I would go on, and then very quickly realized that I'm like way too controlling, and I can't sit around and like wait to be told what to do. And I worked with a really good stage manager who like she was on her shit and like knew everything all the time and had the plan and had the schedule and was the one just like making sure that everything was running smoothly. And I was like, oh no, well that's actually what I do. Like that's a much better use of my skills. And I still get to be in the space and still get to do that. So I ended up just like shifting the direction of my degree.
Which what a lovely thing. I feel like most people get so like, especially like a performer would be like someone who's got this like very vivid, intense, specific, clear, like this is what I'm supposed to be. This is what I want to do. And like, I feel like that's a really special thing that you were able to see that small little shift and be like,
that's better.
Especially in something
That's
like
the key to
acting, where like to be an actor, you're kind of like, oh, it's all about me, and then to shift that, okay, it's not all about me. But that decision was kind of all about.
Well, no, it's just using your natural skills.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Allie is looking for a new job currently. And we went through this very in-depth personality profile. And she's reading all these things, and she's, like, upset to some degree that, like, they don't line up with whatever her, like, blueprint of what she wanted to be was. And I'm like, that sounds like us, like, everything that they were saying. I was like, it might not be that thing, but that is a super good skill set to have.
Yeah.
I don't have any of those skill sets. And, like, if I was an employer, I would pick you over me every time because you have, like, the tenacity to deal with a long project versus by the end of the day, if I'm not on the next thing, I'm going to be upset. You know, so, like...
Yeah.
But
that's also good awareness for you to have.
be self-aware and know, like, oh, that's actually what I want. And what a blessing that your stage manager was, like, there. Do you still talk?
No, I don't think I've been in touch with her, like, probably since just after college. But she was definitely like a very formative influence in like that decision. And then all the stage managers that I worked with right after that, like to like become a professional stage manager, you apprentice to join the union. So you have to do a certain number of shows and get a certain number of credits in order to like be a full member. So Dylan, I think similar to your point of like seeing what the version of not the spotlight person, but like who all is holding a thing all together behind the scenes is like pretty magical. And to see like what are the personalities that kind of hold that together was really informative, because like you go see a play and you see the like, 8 to 70 people who are on stage, like whatever that is. And like, that's who you see. Sometimes you see the orchestra, so it's like another 30 people. But then there's another like several dozen people who you don't see, who are like keeping the thing together and, like running basically all of the elements that you are like not meant to.
If they do their job well, you never know what happened.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was just to your point, like personality wise, it's a different human. I think it doesn't have to be like entirely different, and it's not that there's not overlap, but I think there's someone who's very well suited to being a performer, and that is exactly what they should be doing, and like that is the person that people should want to watch. And then there's a whole other group of personalities who like should be running the automation and should be being stage managers and being directors, and like I don't know, I think it's really cool to see how theater takes shape in that way, because it requires so many different humans like coalescing, and like there is no deadline more fixed than opening night. Like the tickets have been sold, the thing is happening, so like it's
high pressure, high results.
High pressure. That. It's so real. And often like your rehearsal period is 3.5 weeks, and like then congratulations, you have an audience. So like everybody put on your like big kid pants, and like we're gonna make the thing because the people are coming. So that was a cool change, and like the pressure of that was always like really interesting and good, because it is like it moves really quickly and you have to be paying attention and be on your shit, and I enjoyed that a lot. I got to work on some like big things that were like very cool, and then some small things that were like really beautiful and touching and interesting, and kind of the whole like spectrum of things. So yeah, it's a cool little world, and maybe one day it will come back. We'll see.
It will, for sure.
It will come back. Yeah.
No, it's super interesting. So I was curious, like the process of like deciding that you wanted to be a stage manager, but it sounds like there's a pretty direct path. Like you apprentice and then you just become it. So
a little bit
it's fairly straightforward.
Yeah, like you can get a degree or not. Like there are lots of stage managers who didn't go to school for it, and just started working. Like basically if you start as like a production assistant or as like the person who makes the coffee, like that's your way in. And then you kind of start to like see how things work, and how there's a lot of structure that is consistent across shows. Like obviously different depending on like the type of show you're doing, but kind of how things roll out, and like how the hierarchy works, and like a little bit who you can speak to and who you shouldn't speak to, and like those sorts of things, how the communications work. You learn that by being in it. So you can have the degree and get into that, or you can kind of like start as like the baby at the like bottom of the totem hierarchy, and move your way up. So it's I don't know, very much like a learn by doing kind of situation. And also because every project is different, you're very much just like learning on your feet to sort that out. So I went to university for 4 years, and then I was very lucky to get an apprenticeship right away. Like I graduated in May and started apprenticing in September. Is that not normal? It was, I think I just lucked out. Like I had a good interview with like a nice lady, and she was awesome. And I ended up doing 4 of my 6 apprenticeships with her, and she was just the like she was the best.
I'm assuming like 4 of 6 shows. Right? Like, it's not like years, it's by shows and like stuff.
Correct. Yeah. So I got into the union after 2.5 years, which is also very, very fast. Like usually you can bank on like, I will get one credit per year for 6 years. And then in the meantime,
credit like a full show?
Yeah. There's like a certain parameters that they set around it based on like how long does the show run for and like what are your responsibilities?
How many players?
Correct. Yeah. How big is the theater, like that kind of stuff. So not everything counts as a credit, but once you have them, then you're in the union and then you can like work on more and bigger things. That was really helpful for me when I moved here because there's like Canadian Equity is the Canadian Actor and Stage Manager Union, and then American Actors Equity is the American version, and they have like a reciprocal deal. So if you're a member of one and you have work authorization to be in the other country, you can be like, hey, can I join your union? Yeah. And they're like, cool, give us your money, and then you're in the union. So that it just makes it a little bit easier to like work on, especially bigger things. I think like with any job, if you wanted to consistently do like non-union work, don't join the union because it will limit you and then you can't do other stuff. But I think what I was really interested in doing was working on like the big things. So yeah,
that checks out.
Yeah, that checks out. You know, like if you're gonna do the
we were just talking earlier, you're not interested unless excellence is the only outcome.
Right. Well, as Dylan and I were discussing, if we're not good at it, we're not doing it. So that's not fun. Like, oh my gosh, can I tell you, this past weekend I tried fat tire biking in the snow. And I definitely had like a little toddler meltdown in the middle of it where I was like, I am a good cyclist and I cannot do this and this is stupid. And I was like, no, you will figure it out. And I am a competent biker. Like I do this as a racing thing on a road bike on skinny tires on a road.
Yeah, you're a triathlete. Like,
yes, sir.
This should not be a problem.
It should not be a problem. But it was like incredibly upsetting to be like, why can I not keep this bike upright? And also like, I don't like falling. So, and then we have to just like, take a second and be like, what am I actually upset about? No one cares that I'm not good at this except for me. So it doesn't matter. And I have to like be the one to sort this out. And then we have a moment of growth and then we continue the biking and then we go, I'm a grown up. Okay. So yeah.
Now I'm just on the edge of my seat. Yeah. What happened with the biking? Did you ever figure out what was going on?
Oh yeah. It was just the snow was really deep and it's hard. So there were like, it was hard. Yeah. So we did like a 10-mile ride. And so like the first like 2.5 miles, neat. And then like kind of miles like 2.5 through 5, it was just like, wow, there is so much loose snow and the bike was not interested. And so I had a nice walk and I looked at the sky and I pushed my bike and I got a little arm workout and that was great. And then I got back on the bike and then I biked the rest of it.
Wow.
It was hard and it was great.
I forget that other people bike to go a distance.
Versus
like
off a cliff,
like as a form of not just a way to inevitably injure yourself.
Is that not the purpose of biking? The inevitable injury? Very good. But it was good. It was, it's important to like try new things as a grown up and be bad at them. And then like maybe that is the like self knocking down a peg. Where you're like, no, I'm good. Maybe it's important to just be reminded that like we can always be growing. We can always be like learning new things. We can always be falling off a bike and not hitting our heads and being very happy about that. In snow. That was a very merciful thing. It was nice.
More than 10 times you fell over?
No, probably right around 10.
Okay.
Yeah. And not like, I wasn't like going like 60.
Honest, like, as an adult, God, was so frustrating.
Here in my stupid snow pants, being just like a huge toddler, like, I'm going to push my bike up the hill. Okay. But it was great. It was like beautiful and good and magical for so many other reasons. And then there was growth. So hooray. Yeah, hooray.
Yeah.
Have you injured yourself on a bike recently?
I've got my collarbone surgery that's healing up, but that wasn't from a recent injury.
That was an old injury.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I've there was
when was the time? Yeah, he landed on his head pretty good.
Pretty aggressively.
Do you wear a helmet?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
So I didn't as a kid, but I've grown and matured.
Wow, so much growth here around this table.
No, that was probably like the most recent time. But I fell on like a stuntman airbag, so like it was a bad fall. It was. You
would have died if it was concrete.
There's a good chance.
Were you there for this?
Pretty serious things would happen.
There may or may not be a video floating around
that you may or may not have shot. Yeah. Okay.
No, I had my friend film it because I was really close to landing a backflip tail whip, which is something I've just always wanted to do. And this one, my shoulder came out of socket as I like left the ramp. So it just like rolled down the windows to my head from several.
Yeah, so he goes upside down and then stays upside down and lands upside down.
Because I like let go of the bike and lost all my momentum. So I'm just like ragdolling through the air and like fell straight to my head. And everyone was like, oh, he's dead. I'm like, that's for sure.
Oh my God.
And I get up and I'm like, guys, can you believe it? I'm still here. And,
it's a miracle.
Yeah. And they're all like, let's stop. But it was after like 5 very close attempts, like putting both feet on and just putting a foot down kind of a thing. And just my body wasn't participating on that final one. But that's like, I feel like that's my version of New York. Like you've dealt with so many crazy, high, intense, like you've literally shared a subway with someone pooping on the subway. Like that's a gnarly moment. And you now know how to get through life without panicking, and you have some grace and like flexibility in moments where others might not. I am very good in like a high stressful situation because I've like, fallen 20 feet to my head before and like real fast make sure I'm okay, get back up, wave to the crowd, and like I feel like that's my form of like you have to get like inoculated to stress.
Interesting.
Like I know some friends of ours and they are wonderful people. Mm-hmm. But they just aren't inoculated to like intense high stress or like pressure or some of these things because they were loved as children. And
interesting. Oh, we've just opened a door and let us walk through it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go for like I was joking about like everybody gets a trophy and stuff, but like it like because they didn't have to like deal with these intense, stressful, like gnarly moments. When it happens for the first time and you're like, I have friends where they've gotten injured at like 25 for the first time and it's like earth shattering and their entire life spirals out of control for like 3 weeks versus like I carried my own stuff in from my own collarbone surgery versus like you're so calm, cool and collected under like these intense stressful work environments because you've had the next day is opening day and nobody knows their lines and things are happening and you're like running around making sure that everything's working. So now you're like better under that pressure.
I think that's real. There's like that inoculation is definitely, that feels accurate of just like learning how to be in a situation that is like tense or stressful or uncomfortable or like any version of those things. Obviously, like there are extremes that I think like no one can ever plan or prepare for and that like no one is expected to be like their best self in situations XYZ. But I think there's definitely something to be said for like doing that mental comparison of like, okay, this thing I'm experiencing right now, how does it compare to like the most stressful thing I can possibly imagine or that I have been through, or like what is the worst case scenario? And is this that? No. Okay, great. Or being in the situation where you're like, what is the worst case scenario? Oh, it's this. Oh, I'm literally living through what I would have previously said was the worst possible thing that could ever happen. And then you get to the other side of it and you're like, oh, okay, somehow like we persevere. And like, it's really interesting, like how we can be so limited by what we feel we or other people are like capable of, that if we are tested as human beings, and I say this from like a position of like incredible privilege, that like the things that have been the hardest, like, the things that have been the hardest in my life that have been hard, like I recognize that like relative to being a refugee, relative to like war, famine, like there are so many things that are like, oh, that's actually like really terrible. But
sometimes your phone doesn't work, and that's annoying.
Or like people die, or like, things that are just like your conception of like what is the worst possible thing that could happen. And then it happens and you're like, okay, and now I'm standing on the other side of it. What do I take away from that? Like, I think it's really interesting that we can do more than perhaps we think that we can. So we're in the stressful thing. Like, for example, your friend humans who don't deal well with pressure. Like, I bet they've been in stressful situations where they've actually gotten through it. Like, somehow they're still alive.
I try and remind them of this. Yeah, like, you've never not made it.
Totally.
A single time. You've never not made it.
It comes back to I'm invincible because I've literally never died.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite self-attributed quote.
Is that yours?
Yeah.
That's very good.
So
It
was
came
mine.
about in a different way.
I think it was my birthday, and I had gone to pick Dylan up from the bar.
Yeah,
and at the time
it was his birthday, and I celebrated, and he designated drove.
and,
I mean, friendship.
yes.
Yeah.
And I, at the time, had a very fast Subaru with a roof rack and a bike on that roof rack.
Okay.
And Dylan rode home on the bicycle, theoretically. It's
Allegedly.
Allegedly, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so...
Like sit. Okay, hold on. Paint
he's
this picture
sitting on
for
a
me.
bike
The
on
bike
a
is
roof
upright.
of my Subaru while I drove home.
Did you go under any bridges? That was my first thought. But I was like, okay.
But that would have been hilarious.
been
If I could have
hilarious,
like
actually, yeah.
Legend of Zorro, like Tonto, and like just like classic cartoon, like very slowly approached a bridge as he like panicked on my roof. That would have been great.
like a
but-
train and the kite.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
probably would have deserved it.
Well, he was very angry that I wasn't going faster.
I was screaming, "Go 90, go 90!"
Yeah. I mean, we made it to several digits. And anyways, we get home
my God.
and we're
Okay.
like through the moon because we're boys and we're dumb. And Allie, she's like trying to love me. It's my birthday. And she's like, also, I'm so mad at you right now. You guys are idiots. And then she's like, Dylan, what are you thinking? And he just looks at her like...
No, she was like, "You could have died."
And he just stares her like right down the barrel and just, I'm invincible. And she's like, Dylan, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're not invincible. I've not died yet.
No, I believe my exact words were, "I've literally never died."
Yeah.
That's why I attribute that quote to
It's
myself.
the best.
I mean, that's pretty good, and it's not wrong. So,
Exactly.
but I mean, like, for the listening audience, like, be careful.
Yeah.
Like,
In all fairness, this is a dude who's literally ridden bikes since he was a child. He's ridden dirt bikes. We're very... like, again, that's like our inoculation is like wild stuff like that.
Bikes
like,
are not scary.
We're basically like stunt men. Like we used to like jump over fire and like all this crazy stuff that we would like. So to us, that seems very normal versus like being on a subway full of like the craziest group of people all smushed in there and no one wants to be there. Sounds way crazier to me, and that would probably be like my stressful situation.
but like somehow like way safer, probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Well, but it's like we're talking about this inoculation thing. Like, we didn't start by going 90
That's true.
on a bicycle on a roof
Which
rack.
we didn't do ever, to be fair. We
just
were-
allegedly,
Yeah.
maybe 65.
Yeah, I don't think we got up to
Yeah.
90.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But
Go 90.
We changed ours a few times.
yeah, you start with a bicycle jump that's on a bricks,
Yeah.
3 inches tall, wearing full hockey pads.
Yeah.
I have this video.
Yeah.
Really?
It's
And,
adorable.
yeah. And I wasn't even that young. When I was playing hockey, I was probably like 12 or 13.
Awesome.
So
but you're like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it
yeah.
safely.
And we do this, and then we go a little bit faster, a little
Yeah.
bit higher, and
Yeah.
over 20 years, that builds up into being able to do some cool stuff.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I feel like that's such a good like analogy for life things generally, right? Like the rushing into the things, sometimes it works and sometimes it turns out like you're a genius cyclist and you're amazing and you can do it with no training. But actually, the long game, very helpful, like plan it and practice it and like build up and like get to the place that you like actually know what you're doing before you just like try to like run through the wall, because it turns out like that wall is solid.
That one is brick.
And that one is brick.
Yeah.
But like if you put yourself in a position and you plan and you prepare, like there you go. Now you can like ride a bike off a mountain. I assume that's what you do.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, we go in the air.
You go in the air. You take
Yeah.
the bike in the air. The bike doesn't go in the air, but you put it there.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah.
Well, I feel like what you just shared is so... we have a lot of guests on the podcast, and that's been like one of my favorite things is my definition of like joy and like excitement and all these things that I'm passionate about is this little tiny bubble, and we've gotten to expand that bubble and share this space with a bunch of really interesting people that have very different views on what brings them joy, and hopefully we can like share that with people, and maybe that sparks some interest and some passions for other people.
Totes.
You are one of the few people that out bubbly me in a room.
Oh,
in terms of
I
energy.
don't think that's true.
It is a rare opportunity when I find myself in competition for like, no, I want the attention. And it's fantastic and amazing because it makes me better. And
because it gives you something to strive for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but in all honesty, you're so lovely and so bubbly and so fun.
I appreciate
you.
That's that
we could get into
acting.
So many other
She's,
things.
perhaps.
I think the tiny baby actor is still in there somewhere, or at least
Yeah,
I
I
know
could
how
tell.
to like pull her out when appropriate. Staff meetings where I have to give presentations,
The
and
joy you bring.
Oh, but here's the thing: is that I am so uncomfortable that we have to go into full like blackout mode, and then we're just like, and we're making.
Is there another way to perform?
I don't know, but that's what it is. Yeah. And then we talk about Asana or whatever it is that we're talking about today. Yeah.
So the reason I bring all this up is from the outside looking in, I'm sure a lot of people, if they saw us two in a room and we're, jiving and we're having a good time, they would probably think we're very similar in like our actual, like what brings us comforts, what brings us, like where our boundaries are.
Oh,
because
interesting.
from the outside looking in, we're both like these extroverted people who are, so boisterous and like improv-y and like having all this spontaneity, but in all actuality, I think we're actually different in some pretty major ways, even though we've both ended up in this place where like most people probably think of us as very joyful, extroverted, like excited people. We've come about it very different ways, and I'd love to hear more about like maybe your process of how you've gotten to this place. Have you always been this way?
That's so interesting. Like, what an actually like very deep, good question. One, I think personalities are so fascinating, and like everybody can kind of like slot into one of like several buckets. I think generally, and where that comes from, I think is similar for like the people that fit into this bucket. Like that probably formed at the same time for the same kinds of reasons. That is so interesting. I think that yes, I have been this personality for my whole existence, but I think my like public facing self is quite different than my like alone self, but I think I'm able to exist in a particular way in the world because I like prioritize the like introvert recharge time is what I like to call it, because I think I'm actually like in a lot of ways very introvert. I'm very comfortable with people. I love people. I love talking to people. I more so love listening to people. Like I find this amount of talking is like quite unusual for me, and I'm like just like trying to be cool with it.
Well, you're doing great.
Oh my God, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think because I've spent so much of my career not being the loudest one, not like being the one who
being
like
a production manager, you're not going to be.
Your job is to like receive the things and fix the things and be like, the thing is fixed, or like, how can I make this easier for you? Like, it is very much not about my opinion, my comfort, my whatever, and like that's fine.
You're dealing with Broadway actors, so like literally the biggest personalities you can be.
There's
around.
some very big personalities, and they're like beautiful, wonderful humans.
Not by any means bad. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah. But I think that like there's something to, if I like actually think about it, I am a very excited person. Like very simple things bring me like an enormous amount of joy. Like the sun, as discussed, the sky, very good. Water, like I think it's a lot of nature things apparently. Dogs, like movement, running, like there are very simple things that just make me like so incredibly fundamentally happy, and it doesn't take a lot to like make me joyful. And I think the like the act of putting that back into the world is really important. I think because in my existence, I've known a lot of people who exist in like the, like the sad, bad place. And so I, like, if I'm going into like the deep mine of thinking, I'm like, oh, how much of my existence has been like having to be the like leavening, like having to be the force that like, just like kind of brings everything back up a little bit, because what has been around has been less light. So like one internalizes one's own things because one's job is to like bring the lightness or to bring the like the fixing. But I think in order to be able to do that, I have to do the recharging. So what also brings me joy. It sounds
like what you're saying is like having time to take care of yourself as an introvert and have some like quality time with Amy, where it's just you and you get to kind of recharge your own batteries, is what allows you.
Yeah.
Like you've learned what recharges your batteries.
Totally.
And so that's why you get to show up so regularly at full power. Versus most people may not actually know what charges their batteries.
Right.
Or they're like bummed that that's the thing that charges their batteries. I know so many people who are like, but I wish that's what charged my batteries.
And you're like, oh, that's actually not something that's working
unfortunately,
for you. Yeah.
That's not in the cards. Just enjoy whatever that brings you. If you lean into it, you'll at least have a full battery. And that might bring you to a new place. But
and it often doesn't take a lot to do that recharging, I think. Like, it's, to your point, the case of figuring out what is it that recharges you. And it's not a lot. And then you show back up in the world in the way that you, like, want to be in the world or feel good being in the world. I think I would not enjoy showing up in the world, like, in a low energy, kind of downery, complainy, icky place. Like, obviously, RedT Homes are kind of complainy, but they're, like, more funny than complainy.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Or
they're
like
very light for, like, going and addressing a very dark moment.
My like, bitching about New York is, like, mostly in jest because also, like, I don't live there anymore. But I think, like, there's something to be said for identifying what it is that, like, makes you be a whole person. And if one of those things, if there's many, or if there's one thing that is missing and you're not showing up as your best self in the world, like, there's probably a reason. And so it's worth spending the time to be like, what do I need? Like, is it food? Is it water? Is it movement? Is it time with people? Is it time away from people? Do I need some sleep? Do I need less sleep? Like, what am I doing in my existence that are, or that is helping me or not helping me,
Totally.
or how many, like, draining forces are there in my existence right now that are taking my energy away, and I'm also not able to replenish it quickly enough. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like very simple things bring me joy, and in order to show up in the world as, like, as the human I want to be, I just have to constantly seek those out and just, like, make sure that that's, like, topped up. So
Well, I think that's an important part too, is now that you know what they are, I would be shocked if you don't voraciously defend getting what you need.
And that's a really interesting
Because
part
that's
of it,
just
I
as
think.
important.
Yeah. And I think a lot of humans, myself included, I think to a point, I think I've learned enough to be like, oh, no, I get to prioritize my own priorities. But it's often very hard to say, like, this is what I need. Like, I'm going to say no to this thing because it's actually really important that I do this. And being able to, like, set boundaries for yourself and, like, manage that on your own behalf, I guess, can be very tricky. And, like, obviously, like, I'm a person who does not have children. I have a dog. Like, I don't own my home. Like, I have so many things that are, like, actually not grown-up responsibilities that other adults my age have. So I definitely say that from a place of knowing that my responsibilities are mostly to myself, and then also not being shitty to my friends and my family. Like, that's, like, those are kind of my responsibilities, and, like, going to work. But I think there's something to be said for, like, as much as you can, defending the things that make you be a good human. Like, because I think my mom used to say, like if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, or something like that. And,
it's
like,
so real.
That's so real, because, like, nobody else is going to take care of that stuff for you. And if you want to be arriving in the world in a way, like, you have to just, like, make sure the things are in a place. So that's, like, are all the things in your house in exactly the right place that you need them to be in order to be, like, a calm human? Like, I can't deal with clutter, so everything in my house has a very designated spot that it bees in. And then I walk in and I look at my house and I'm like, yes, everything is here. Great. And then I, like, don't have to have a meltdown about it.
Yeah.
So I think knowing that about myself and then not apologizing for it, so that if the people come into the home and they move the things, I'm like, that's actually not really good, and that has to be like, just okay. And then I don't have to be, like, stupid about it. So yeah, I think it's also just, like, owning our own weirdness and being like, sometimes I'm weird and it's fine. Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty much what our entire purpose at the Quota Podcast is to hopefully get people to ask those questions of themselves and to, like, not be bummed that the thing that they need to recharge, or the thing that you described it so well of, I want to show up as this person. And then literally doing the math of, like, well, in order to have the I think of it as a bank account or maybe gas in a tank of like,
Yep.
in order to have enough resources
Yep.
of time, effort, and give a fucks,
Yep.
then I must have X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And so
That's so
often
real.
nobody does the like algebra to get to there ahead of time, and half the time
algebra might be
it's not even
we're
that
complicating it a little bit
complicated,
too much. Yeah,
But,
Be like the
it's
gentle
just-
line sketch.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not.
It's pretty
not
simple.
much.
I mean,
It's
that is the
simple
joy
addition,
quota.
yeah.
It's you gotta fill your quota.
Totally.
Well, and to
totally.
even have the quota in the first place.
to know that it exists, I guess, and like
Yeah, to know like joy and fulfillment is just as important as making sure that my bank account is full and that I'm feeling healthy and that I have the right people in my life and that I'm getting enough sun and movement and air and all the things that it's so easy to just kind of let fall to the side. So
Yeah.
I think that that's a really beautiful thought.
I would agree.
Yeah, well
Absolutely. Killing it.
said. Gosh.
Yeah.
You are just such a dynamic person, and it's so
appreciate
fun to get to have you on the podcast. And
Thank you
to
for
get to,
hanging
like,
out with
pry
me. This is so
some
lovely.
fun stories from your wonderful brain. I think that there's something that at least is on my mind, might be on Dylan's mind. We would like to hear an insane story from Broadway because it seems like a place where there's probably an insane story of just like something
Whoa.
where you're like, wow, what a crazy time. Or maybe it's like, well, this was the funnest show I ever did. Or maybe it's like, this is the one time when we were like a millimeter from everything falling apart and then it didn't or whatever.
Or it did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or it did.
Yeah.
It's an equally exciting story.
So much of our gig was what they teach you in stage management school is like your job is to make sure the show doesn't stop, which is like if you've ever been to a play and like the curtain comes in and then there's an announcement that's like, ladies and gentlemen, we're holding for a technical malfunction, please remain in your seats. Like that would be one of us.
For shame.
For shame. That would be a stage manager saying that. And like often like that is happening for a safety reason. That like if you're stopping, it's because either someone did get hurt or someone was about to get hurt and like we had to stop, or like something faulted, like all of that like automated scenery that moves. It's not like some guy pushing it, it's robots and computers moving it. Like it's crazy. We were taught that basically like your gig is to make sure that things never stop. So like, are you in rehearsal and like somebody's about to ask for this glass and I've already passed it to them? Like there should not be a second of waiting for anything. It's like you're preempting and you're looking 10 steps ahead and making sure that like stuff is on track and things are going smoothly. There are so many instances though where like say the robots are like, no, I don't want to take that cue today. And then the scenery just doesn't move. And like the automation technician is like, I'm pressing the button and it's not moving. And you're like, yep. And then you have to hit the e-stop on the thing because the last thing that you want is for the thing to catch up 5 seconds later. And like now what's in the path of that moving scenery is an actor. And like our job was also to like keep everybody safe and make sure that nobody was going to
a distant second.
Distant. Well, it was all kind of like make sure
Yeah.
nothing stops and also that no one gets
I'm
hurt
totally
and
joking.
like they go together. Yeah. So there, man, what are some crazy things? Like, I mean, we had things break all the time, which was like always pretty wild. So I was going like in the reverse order of the archive. Oh, okay. I can go way back in the archive. Okay, like maybe the craziest thing that happened in my stage management career. And this, like, okay, I will preface this by saying, like, some crazy stuff happened. Like, some people fell off some things.
Yeah.
Some people fell into some things. And, like, I was working on a certain show at the Radio City Music Hall featuring a bunch of dancing girls who kick their feet to their faces. You might know it. It's the Rockettes.
Yeah.
And one of the, like, drapes was up in the air, like... So everything, when it's not, a piece of scenery is not on stage and it is not like in play, it lives up in the fly loft. And so it gets pulled out like 100 feet in the air.
Super high, yeah.
It's super high. And so let's imagine like there's a big piece of scenery up there and I don't know, it has like candy canes or something on it. And there's a pipe in the bottom and that's the weight that allows that to come in and then like hit the floor in one big, beautiful solid line.
Yeah.
Now imagine it's like December 15th and like the Christmas show has been running for a month now. And prior to this version of Christmas, the scenery was all stored in a warehouse, and it's the same scenery we've used for, these drops are 35 years old, and they were dry rotted, and then all of a sudden you have all of the Rockettes on stage, and they're dressed as the soldiers, and they're doing that like very beautiful like classic wooden soldiers number. And the bottom of the drop just gives out, and the pipe starts falling out, and there's girls dancing, and they have these huge hats on, and the like pieces of pipe are falling out of the sky. There's literal just like weapons falling from 80 feet in the air onto the girls, and like magically nobody but a stage manager got hurt. Like
wow,
that was pretty banana pants. So I say that to say like that was pretty crazy and weird and unexpected, because just like at that moment, like those pipes could have fallen out of the sky at any time overnight. They could have descended from the air, but
had to happen right then
during the show with all the women on stage. So I say that, and then I back up 11 years, and I'm working on Hairspray, and Hairspray, delightful.
The only show I've ever seen on Broadway.
No way. Very good. I didn't work on it on Broadway, however. Great show. That was one of the first ones. My mom took me to like the big theaters in Toronto that would get the tours. I think she took me there for like a Christmas present one year, and I was like, this is what I will do. I like cried through the whole thing. Like so formative, so beautiful. Like what a beautiful show. I was also like a very fat kid, so being like a show about a fat girl, like great, like delighted. And okay, so here we are. It's 2010, 2011.
Okay.
It's been a bit. And so here we're making Hairspray, and I'm standing in the wing, and I'm like, okay, neato, show's happening, it's all good. And the actor playing the mother, like it is a man playing the mom, starts wandering off the stage in the middle of the scene, and I was like, that's weird. Why is he coming over here? Like, is he okay? And he kind of was like wandering out into the wing, and I was like boop, 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 what are you doing out here? And so he like then went back onto the stage. And then he like went up on a line, which is like where you forget what you're saying and you kind of like lose it. And then the next
what a lovely term for such an intense moment. To like forget a line on Broadway. Oh, he just went up on a line.
He went up on a line. It's fine.
I was thinking of the line as in like
like a
flying.
foy line?
Yeah.
Yep. We're
He
not
went
there
to
yet.
Hairspray.
Yeah.
No, I've definitely not.
Although I've worked on a lot of things with flying, and it's so scary. It's so scary. I hate it so much. Like I love it and it's wonderful, but like it's terrible.
Yeah, as a stage manager, I'm sure things get very serious.
With any amount of danger.
Yeah.
Turns out this like lovely actor was having a stroke.
I was afraid of that.
Yeah. And then he wandered back out onto the stage, and then in the middle of a scene he was not in, he brought himself back up to like the deck level and then wandered out, and it was myself and another ASM on the other side, and we were like, something's going on with him. And the calling stage manager, who was the one essentially like air traffic controlling what was happening, she was like, neato, and she like had them bring in the curtain, and we called an ambulance, and then we closed the show for 4 days, and then we rehearsed somebody new to go into his role who had never done it. Like we didn't have understudies at this theater. So we brought in a new guy, and he learned the show in 3 days, and then on the 4th day we reopened with an audience, and that was really crazy. And I was still like, I was a baby stage manager. Like that I think was maybe my first full-time contract, like as a full union person.
Talk about inoculation right there.
Girl, you know what? You learn, and then you see that like, oh, like crazy things can happen, and like actually you can't prepare for any of it, because like who could have known that would happen?
Yeah, of the many things that you can prepare for.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But there's like, I mean, like of all the examples of things to happen, like mine are pretty tame, and I feel very lucky for that. Like lots of show stops.
A dude having a stroke on stage doesn't seem tame.
He's okay though. He's still okay now.
That's my next question.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he went back to acting?
Yes, not that show. He didn't finish the run, but I think like the next season had more contracts, and
wow.
Yeah, just like really crazy.
Amazing.
Like I think that's like also a level of resilience to be like, well, I'm going to get back into the space where like a very scary bad thing happened. But that was the kind of stuff that we were dealing with. Also the stakes of what we were working on, and like how big things were and how like potentially dangerous things were. We're like, oh, you actually have to be on your game, or someone's going to lose a leg and they'll never dance again. Someone could literally fall and die off of or into anything. And so we did a lot of like yelling and big gesturing. So like my staff meeting voice, where I like talk about Asana or like whatever it is that we're doing. The same thing would be like, man, there's a hole over here, and if you walk in this direction, you will die. So don't do do it. And it's like, you know, just trying to like keep
no
it
one
light.
knows how real that is in the staff meeting, because we are in such a like naturally like real estate is such a blah thing for, like everyone is so unimpressed with it, and I'm like, you guys, this is incredible. Everything we're doing. Can you believe this?
And isn't that a good energy to bring to it?
And like the level of uncomfortability for everyone else in the room, like me and David, feeling great. We're like, yes, finally someone is on our level. And then everyone else is like, why is this chick so excited? Like, it's so phenomenal.
But would you not rather listen to that than somebody being like, okay, and then we're going to talk about the fitness challenge in like a really kind of like way.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and I think that's like, again, inoculation. Like, there's no cool way to be the person in charge.
No.
So
Often
being
not.
able to just sit with the fact that like that's off the top, like it's not.
It's already weird.
On the table. It's already weird. So I might as well be showy. And a lot of gestures and like I'm gonna make jokes and have fun. Because it's already weird.
It's already weird.
I couldn't do this so great. It's not weird.
That's so accurate. But is that also not like true of life? So like, let us just be in like the weird version of like being a human and like, this is all very strange. Like, let's just live in like the higher, lighter version of it, because like the alternative is really dark.
Totally.
Like the alternative of existing and like being a human and being in human interactions is like, oh, woof, so hard. So perhaps
I
instead.
think about that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, how weird is it? Everything we do is like people. It's so weird.
It's so weird.
So when something weird happens, we're just like, yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
That feels so right.
Yeah.
And like, let us celebrate that it's like beautiful and weird, because otherwise it's just kind of grim.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't love that.
Well, I mean, what a great thought. Yeah. Let's celebrate that it's kind of weird and beautiful.
It's kind of weird.
And just
live
in that space.
And live in that space.
Yeah.
I think it makes it a little easier. We just sort of submit to humanity. Be like, yeah, all right, universe, what's next? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Great. Yeah.
Amy, you're the best. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate you both so much. Thank you for hanging out with me. This is delightful.
Absolutely. Well, we are reaching pumpkin hours, and so
Pumpkin time.
we would like to wrap up, but
Great.
we have a very, like we always ask this of everyone.
Okay.
It's not like, this is a very selfish question. This is just for you.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a good piece of story.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be interesting. This
Okay.
is just for you. And we always like to end on, when you think of joy, what comes to mind? Or like, what is joy to you?
Oh, that's so interesting. You said joy, and the first thing I pictured was like a lake and trees and a mountain, like immediately.
Wow.
Which is really like interesting and I don't know, probably informative. That I think there's something about like, there's like a safety in that also, like the outdoorsiness and the like access to, I don't know. I'm just imagining like, oh, am I like a cave lady? Like, what's so appealing about that? I'm like, oh, there's like sky and shelter and water, and it's like calm and peaceful, and there's like probably no predators. Like, that's probably actually where that comes from. That, like, like the joyfulness is like the safety and the calm. But I think like joy is being out and moving in nature. Like, at least that's what gives me a like profound sense of joy. I don't know. Is there also maybe like a connection to being just like reassured that like things are in a good place and you're on the right path? Maybe my definition of joy is like comfort and calm and safety. Like as I'm digging this all up, it's like actually that like everything is okay and it is calm and safe and good.
Which is hilarious because you spent so long as a stage manager where nothing is calm and likely not safe. But most things are good. But
is it not then like very joyful and wonderful when it actually all is? Like when things are like not shitting the bed or exploding, are you not like, oh, it's very good. Everything is, I'm so joyful.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's, I don't know. That's such a good question. Yeah, I think it lives in that space of just like a calm, grounded easefulness maybe. And that like, maybe like the pursuit of joy for me personally is the search for like things being in just like a nice equilibrium and being very balanced and not tense or complicated. I think that is joy in its like simplest and purest version, I think. Acceptable? Cool. Okay.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's no right answer.
Okay.
So.
You've passed our test.
Yeah.
You now have our candy factory. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all yours, Charlie.
Also, that movie, so good, but so creepy. Like, super creepy. I love it so much, and I used to watch it all the time. And now, as an adult person, I watch it, and I'm like, danger.
It's weird that all of us as kids just accepted that 4 human adults lived in the same bed.
Oh, yeah, that was
Full
pretty
time.
weird, too. I used to think a lot
Like
about
the opening scene, we were all just like,
Yep.
on board. Cool.
Where do the legs go? Doesn't matter.
Word on the street is there's a chocolate factory.
Yeah.
Like, get to the good parts.
They just are there all the time.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
I think there's a meme that had brought this up. It's like, he can't get out of bed for anything except as soon as there's some candy involved. Like, all right, we're out of bed.
Maybe that was his joy.
Yeah.
Turns out, yeah. I'm glad he
That's
found
his
it.
calm and equilibrium.
Glad
A
he
sugar
found the
high.
joy.
Wonderful. I appreciate you both so much. Thank you for letting me hang out with you. And thank you for putting your good, positive vibes in the world. I feel like it's really important and necessary. So,
Well, thank you
Thanks.
for joining us.
anytime.